So sweet. Man, I was a really accomplished child. I might have peaked too early. I don't know. We'll see. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you guys for being here. So, a couple weeks ago, I found an article that filled me with a considerable amount of rage. And it was this: 5 reasons why diving boards have gone the way of the dinosaur. Just 10, 15 years ago, apparently 90% of pools with a deep end, especially obviously if you don't have a deep end, you can't have a diving board, but they had diving boards and they have been disappearing across the United States. And I was kind of surprised why I was so angry about this until I remembered that anger is one of the stages of grief. Because I grew up in Central Florida. This house with the light gray roof was my house, 409 Village View Lane. I spent nearly the first decade of my life in Central Florida where every house had a pool and every pool had a diving board because the diving board was the center of action. The diving board is where you learn to do a real dive or a pencil dive, some of you prefer. It's where you learned how to do a front flip and a back flip. It's where you commanded the attention of all the neighborhood kids when you played silence or sharks and minnows or fruit basket turnover. The diving board is where, if you had the audacity, you would accept someone's dare to jump off the end, spread eagle, and do a belly flop. Oh, yeah. The diving board turned girls into women and boys into men. Fast forward to 2023, some guy named Marcus is telling me that insurance makes it nearly impossible to have a diving board today. And apparently, insurance gets astronomically expensive when you install a diving board in your pool. And because everyone's covering their butt now, diving board manufacturers change the way they build them. They're not as flexible and as bouncy and as fun as they used to be. But then Marcus listed a different reason, and these 5 reasons that hit me in a different way. He said that in a pool where there's both a shallow end and a deep end, people spend 80% of their time in the shallow end. So why have a diving board? And this made me upset, not because I spend a lot of time in pools and in shallow ends of pools, but I spend a lot of time in the shallow end of my life. Like I told my leader, Jackie Quinn, a couple months ago, I said, I feel like my life is this like lake or something, some body of water, and I'm spending most of my time just water skiing over the surface, just zooming and zipping by when an entire world is just beneath my toes. A deep, deep part of me, a deep place that contains my thoughts, my feelings, reflections about life, my spiritual life. Like, y'all, it's hard for me to string 2 minutes of prayer together anymore without my squirrel brain running off. Do y'all feel this? Do you know what it feels like to miss the deep places of life? And as a creative, everyone in this room is creative, whether you're like a creative, a writer or designer here, or you are someone who builds email campaigns or you analyze data. Like all of us, in some way, our job is to confront the chaos of life and to create order and beauty from it. And we get that in these deep places. The deep places mean a lot to me as a creative. That's where I go to lose myself, to lose sense of time, to lose track of what's happening in my life. It's where I connect dots and I find ideas. I go to the deep places to make believe and to make sense of the world. The creative process has always involved some kind of level of retreat and withdrawal. I love learning about how creatives do their work. And last year I learned something amazing about the renowned poet Maya Angelou. In every city where Angelou lived, she kept a hotel room where she would go to do her work. That was her deep place. She would get there about 6:30 in the morning and stay till about 1:30. And she said this in an interview about the topic. She said, I go to the room and I feel as if all my beliefs are suspended. Nothing holds me to anything. No milkmaids, no flowers, nothing. I can say I've never had a milkmaid distract me from my creative work. She says, I just want to feel. And then when I start to work, I'll remember how beautiful, how pliable the language is, how it will lend itself. Nathaniel Hawthorne says, easy reading is damn hard writing. She continues, of course, there are those critics, New York critics as a rule, who say, well, Maya Angelou has a new book out, and of course it's good, but then she's a natural writer. Those are the ones I want to grab by the throat and wrestle to the floor because it takes me forever to get it to sing. I work at the language. Creation is hard, hard work. We all know this. And we see this in the opening pages of Scripture, this idea of the deep places. Genesis 1 and 2 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void. It was a place of chaos, a wasteland. And darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. I do not have a seminary degree. None of this constitutes theological advice, but blueletterbible.org is open to anyone on the internet. And I looked up some of these words, and this word deep, it's like this very visual picture of an abyss, like a bottomless pit, something as vast and as mysterious as the ocean. And this word hovering, it conveys a sense of growing soft and relaxing. The same word is used to describe a hen roosting on her eggs, keeping them warm and safe as she brings them to life. That's the creative process. And it doesn't happen without confronting the deep places. So whether you build emails or you write or you strategize or you produce shows, you are made to go to the deep places to confront the chaos and to bring order and beauty from it. This requires a tremendous amount of focus and of mental muscle to do this problem solving. And I crave this even as I struggle to achieve it. Like if I'm not careful, I spend way more than 80% of my life in the shallows. Everybody knows, hopefully in this room, you know what it feels like to get lost in this state of flow. It's the happiest way to work. You feel so energized, so proud of what you've accomplished. It's this dreamlike state of creation. I want to feel that way. I want to feel like a kid in the deep end of a swimming pool again, more often. And here's why I'm up here today is because I'm concerned that we're collectively losing our ability to do this. And I know I might sound a little bit like a grumpy grandma, like kids these days with their robot phones. But this is me. This is me these days as a writer. It's harder and harder to make the time to do this. We are addicted to the pace of life, to our overcommitments. We're trying to do 17 different things at the same time. We live in a world where multi-billion-dollar corporations are hell-bent on hijacking our attention to make themselves richer. We live in a world where artificial intelligence can outperform a copywriter or an average copywriter or designer in a matter of seconds, y'all. So our ability to go deep and become masters of our craft matters more than ever. So today I just want to start a conversation about this because this matters. This matters that we are able to go deep and problem solve if we want to do the things we set out to do here as a company, to help people get out of debt, to fix broken relationships, to connect people to meaningful work. And I know everyone in this room, you've got your other dreams and side projects, and you're trying to find time to have, pour into that business or that book you're writing, and it's hard to do that. So I care about helping you find the tools you need to do that work better. So we're just starting a conversation today, and we have to start by talking about the enemy that we all face, and this is just distraction, like plain old distraction, the near infinite variety of distraction that comes at us all the time. If you've read The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, he calls this resistance, and I call it notifications. Like, it's as simple as that, because when we sit down to brainstorm our next, batch of social content or to write a talk, in my case, whatever you do, you sit down, you have great intentions. For me, I pull up a Word doc, and then I see a text message come in from my sister, and she's like, oh, did you make the dinner reservations for this week? And I'm like, oh, crap, I forgot to make the reservations. So I hop online to make the reservations, and I do it, and then I think, what should I wear to that dinner? And so I go to the Weather Channel to see how cold it's going to be or how warm it's going to be, decide what I'm going to wear, and then I get totally sidetracked by all the weird stories that are on the Weather Channel. Have you noticed this? It's like anacondas buried in snow in the Amazon. You're like, what is happening? But I don't click because it's fake news, but I see it's going to be colder than I thought. So I think, now's the perfect time to buy that blazer I've been wanting to buy. So I go over to H&M and I'm about to check out, but then I think I need to check the budget first. So I pull out my phone, get out Every Dollar, best budgeting app in the world. And then I see a notification from Instagram that this influencer I've been totally girl crushing on finally messaged me back, and I have to respond right now. Right now. Distraction 1, Rachel 0. This is how we spend most of our workday, right? Y'all, it's noisy in my head. And distractions are deadly for creative connections. If we're always being bombarded by input and by tasks and by demands to do this right now, we are always interrupting our ability to focus and to achieve flow. So I'm not anti-tech. I'm not anti all these things. I love that Joanna Troop, this amazing designer, used her skills as a digital creator to make this poster and these slides. Let's hear it for Joanna. She's awesome. I love what technology does for us, but we have to understand this. Technology is more than a tool. It's not just a tool. When we pick up our devices, we have an infinite number of choices of what we can do with them. Think about the phone that's on Do Not Disturb under your neighbor's chair. You kind of miss it, don't you? You've craved it. You've wanted to pick it up. Why? I don't know. Most of the time, y'all, my husband's birthday was in January, and I ordered him some cookies from Crumble Cookies, and I got the app and got the cookies, whatever. And I found myself over the coming days and weeks just getting the app out just to look at the cookies. I'd never bought them after that day on his birthday, and they only update them once a week. But I was getting it out multiple times a day just to stare at them. I am out of control. We crave our phones and our devices in a way that we don't crave other tools. When I leave the house without my cheese grater, I'm not upset. We have a deep tie to our phones and our devices that's emotional, it's relational, it's social, it's even spiritual. So when I was talking about this idea with some of y'all the other day, Tim Smith pointed out that when we have an addiction, which we all do to our phones, it's less about the willpower of overcoming it as it is about creating the right environment for it to not derail us. We'll talk about that a little bit later, the right environment. And I don't say any of this to shame you. It's not about willpower, like I said, as much as it is about creating the right environment. Many of these apps that we interact with are designed to hijack our focus. One of the biggest misconceptions about ourselves and our ability to do work is the myth of multitasking. You've maybe heard of this. So multitasking didn't exist until the 1960s, like that term. It came about then when computer scientists invented computers that had multiple processors that could really literally do multiple tasks at the same time. And humans were like, well, that sounds nice. I think I'll do some multitasking. But the reality is that saying you can multitask and do two cognitively demanding tasks at the same time is just total BS. It's like saying, I have x-ray vision or I can fly. It is super human. You have one language processor. God designed you to do one thing at a time. What you can do, though, and most of us are very, very good at now, is you can toggle very rapidly between inputs, right? You can jump from Teams to Outlook to text message to conversation happening 2 desks down. The problem is when we do this, especially chronically, we wear out our brains. Our brains weren't meant to do this all of the time. We erode our ability to focus and we do everything less effectively. If you took Kanban, you know about the cost of context switching, but let's review some of this. There's so much literature out there. There's so much evidence that jumping and toggling between tasks is really bad for our mental health. But there's an interesting study I learned about recently when I was reading on this topic. This was a study from HP, from Hewlett-Packard, that had a group of office workers do the same task, but they had 2 different groups. They measured everyone's IQ at the beginning of the task. And there was one group that had no distractions. They were left to simply work and to focus. The other group was bombarded with, they had to answer some phone calls and text message and email throughout the duration of this task. Well, in that group, you can expect, did not perform as well. But more than that, they measured the IQ of everyone at the end of this assignment. And on average, the distracted group experienced a 10-point drop in IQ. Distraction makes you dumber. Which is another reason I had you put your phones under your chairs. I want you to be smarter at the end of this talk than you were at the beginning. The author that I learned about the study from points out that this 10-point drop is double, generally speaking, double the amount of IQ drop that people experience when they're smoking weed. You can't do that at work. So let's say, not yet. Love you, HR. Let's say that you do manage to get into focus mode, okay? You're in it, you're in flow, you're getting work done, and then you're interrupted by a well-meaning coworker or, notification, whatever it is. On average, another study shows that it takes you 23 minutes to get back to the same level of deep focus that you were in. That's more time than it takes to cook a frozen pizza. Are you willing to do that? Now, if we get 23 minutes of focus time, we're actually pretty lucky because another study showed, this is a fun little depressing guessing game. The average office worker focuses on one task for how many minutes? 5, 15, 2, 20, 1. You guys have very low expectations of yourselves. 3 minutes. We can't even get through a pop song without checking our text messages. And I know these are all numbers and this is like studies and stats, whatever, but you feel this like on a physical level. I resonate with this, and it drives me crazy when my squirrel brain gets to call the shots more than I do. Now, let's say that this is how you're working all day and you're here for 8 hours trying to do work. I know nobody actually is, trying to do this for 8 hours straight, but let's say you are and you're checking something every 3 minutes. That's 160 interruptions in your workday. That a lot of them are stuff that we're inviting in, that we're allowing into the space. So there's obviously short-term costs to this, but there's long-term costs. There's a lot of evidence now that we are exhausting our brains. We're eroding our ability to focus. We're not developing, thinking of your brain as like a muscle. We're not developing the muscle we need to do the creative work, to hone our craft. I don't want this for you guys. This drives me crazy. I hate leaving this building feeling totally spun up and wired and tired and wondering what the heck I did other than check the for sale forum and Teams 15 times. Guilty. This is pretty depressing, but there's a better way to do work. And you all in this room are creatives somehow. You are bringing beauty and order out of chaos. And so you can create the right environments, like we talked about earlier, to do the work that you want to do. So here's the question I want you to ask yourself and just frame this conversation going forward. What environment works best for me to do my best work? We all need to start by taking ownership of our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual state of doing our work. Now, I know this can present some frustrations, especially my writer friends. There's part of you is like a hermit and you just don't want to be around anyone ever. And you're like, well, Maya Angelou had a hotel room. I would like one too. Yes, that would be nice. An open office has some challenges, right? But even in this building, in whatever time you're here, what capacity you're in, you have more autonomy and more control than you think. So I'll give you an example. When I started speech writing, I was in meetings 5 to 7 hours a day. I left feeling like a forgotten French fry at the bottom of a deep fryer, just burned to a crisp. And this was not sustainable. I started talking to my leader, Jackie, about this. We started looking at the way that we did work. And if you ask me, hey, what's the best way to write a keynote? I would have not drawn up the system that we were using. So we overhauled the system. We thought about better ways to do deep work. I have 2 types of deep work as a speechwriter. One is the actual writing where I need to go get time by myself in a word processor to do the work. The other is with personalities in collaborative meetings that, believe me, require a lot of focus and a lot of intentionality. So we overhauled it. We talked to the personalities, talked to Josh Hancock, my live events people, and we presented it to the brand leaders and said, hey, we'd like to redo the way we're doing work. And they were like, cool, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know why we were doing it the other way before. It's been a tremendously better use of my time. I started saying no to things that weren't necessary. I got more time back in my schedule to do the writing and do the deep work. So that's just one example of something you can do. Nobody wants you to waste your time. We're just doing it without thinking most of the time. So, so here, although, like I said, sadly, diving boards are disappearing from pools across the nation, I want to give you a few suggestions that you can use as a diving board to get into deep work, into focus, and into flow. And the first thing is to identify your deep work. Like I just said, I know the 2 things that I do to contribute value to this company that Chat GPT can't do yet. What is it for you? What problem are you solving? What's the thing that really moves the needle, that's the most valuable thing that you have to offer? And it's good to distinguish between deep work and shallow work. Shallow work are things that you can do in a fairly distracted environment and it's not high risk, right? Checking emails, responding to messages, filling out forms, all the things that come with being an office worker. There's no shame in that. That stuff is necessary. It's important. It's fine. But think about it this way. If we're spending 80% of our time in the shallows, let's try to flip that to where instead of scheduling breaks from distraction to do focused work, we're doing more focused work and scheduling breaks from that to do the shallow stuff. Yeah. And if you're not sure what your deep work is, like, how do I contribute value here? Talk to your leader. Like, that's a conversation we should all be having. The second suggestion I'll tell you guys is to destroy your distractions. And this does not mean to destroy the chatty team member who sits across from you. But you might need to have a conversation with them about how often they want to chat. There's 2 ways that I think about this: your environmental distractions and your digital distractions, and understanding what you have control over and what you don't have control over. Like Eddie said, I sit in the personality suite, and don't get me wrong, I love it. I love hearing John Deloney spontaneously burst into song, or Ken Coleman pontificate about the dinner he went to the other night. So I love this, but I understand that trying to get deep focus work done in there when there's a bunch of people in there is like trying to go on a walk in the rain and expecting to not get wet. It's just not going to happen. So I know that I am in the personality suite to do shallow work and to connect with my team, which is very important. We are here in the office because relationships matter. And I'm not a very task-oriented person, really. I will almost always choose a person over the thing I'm doing. So I know to take ownership, I have to go schedule time in a conference room or go all around campus. There's a lot of places you can go to do deep work. I'm not going to tell you where they are because I don't want you there. But you can find them. So think about your environment. I know some of you guys are anchored to your desks, designers or video people. Like, you have to be there to use the tech you have. Hey, rely on those systems that you have. I see the red and the green, disturb, not disturb. Use that. You're not a jerk for saying, I'm off limits. Put your noise canceling headphones on and do everything you need to do your focused work, and then take a break. 3rd floor of Building A, Ramsey Ed and Entree. God help you. I have no advice. Your air horns and your gongs and your hoots and your hollers, you're on your own. When it comes to your digital environment, like I said, we have so much control over the notifications that we receive. We can choose to take text message off of our laptops. We can choose to quit those apps. We can choose to leave our phone at a friend's desk across the floor and go get it after we're done with our deep work. Create the right environment. Remember, it's not about willpower, because Instagram is infinitely more interesting than the work you're doing. Okay? Just get it out of there. Don't even try to contend with it. The next thing I'll suggest is to try the 90-minute rule. So once you've identified something you need to do, you've created the right environment, try doing that for 90 minutes. For me as a writer, this is it's like a magic number for me to drop into a state of flow, to really get some stuff done. And then right when my brain starts to get tired, I pop back out. I'm done. I go on a walk. I go see what Eddie's up to and annoy him. If you feel overwhelmed at the thought of doing work for 90 minutes without your phone, you probably need to do it. It's not that long. And I promise you that you are going to enjoy it, that you're going to come out of the other side feeling so energized and accomplished and proud of what you've done. Just so you guys know, I stole this idea from a guy named Cal Newport, who wrote a book called Deep Work. I highly recommend it. I told one of my friends about this. She was writing a novel. She had never, I don't know, she's a very creative person, but I don't know if she had ever achieved flow. I told her about it. It's like, it's awesome. It's so great. Blah, blah, blah. She was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I said, well, put your phone away. Try this for 90 minutes. And she came back the next day after writing, and she said this to me. She was like, this was awesome. It was so enjoyable. It was super hard at first. I was kind of itching to check my phone and see what notifications I had. But she said, after doing the 90 minutes of work, what I experienced was immersion. I felt really connected to the work. Instead of 2 layers deep, I went 5 layers deep. I had better ideas. And also, I just wrote more. I did more work overall. Deep work is the most enjoyable and efficient way to log those hours you need to get to the 10,000 hour mark of mastery. It's the best way to hone your craft and become excellent at what you do. And be patient with yourself. This isn't easy. The last thing I'll say to you is to have lots of time in your day and in your life to let your mind wander. Taking a break from work is sometimes the most productive thing you can do. And we live in a world where there's almost no silence. The minute we start to feel bored or uncomfortable, we pull out our phones and we start checking stuff, right? But the science is overwhelming that mind wandering is essential for focus and for problem solving. So, I mean, you guys know how this is. Like, if you're really disciplined, maybe the first thing you do when you wake up is you have some quiet time or you journal, whatever. But then from then on out, you're off to the races. You're checking text, you're checking email. Sometimes I check email like 7 times before I even get here. I'm like, what am I doing? And then you're like listening to an audiobook, you're listening to Spotify, you're calling your mom, you get here. It's nonstop. We are always flooding our brains with information, input, and sensory overload. But think of your brain as like a free range chicken. Like it's healthiest and happiest when it can just roam about a little bit and have nothing to do, really. No inputs. This is why we have great ideas like in the shower or maybe on a hike when you don't have anything clamoring for your attention. Your brain needs time to subconsciously connect dots, process information. It kind of time travels. It makes sense of the past. It prepares you for the future. Brain breaks are essential for focus and productivity. There's so many examples of this, but I recently heard one from a friend who told me about Lin-Manuel Miranda, the writer of the amazing hit musical Hamilton. He's a genius, so it's not really fair to compare ourselves to him. But still, he had the idea for Hamilton when he was on vacation. This was 2008. He was in Mexico. He was reading a biography about Hamilton, and he said this: "The moment my brain got a moment's rest, Hamilton walked in." Ideas need space. They need some breathing room. They need margin. Our best ideas and creative work come in the margin of our lives. We have to make time for this. Schedule breaks throughout your day to go on walks without your phone. Enjoy your commute in silence. Maybe you don't look at stuff an hour after waking up or an hour before bed. Give your brain a break. When you are always flooding it with input, it's like going to the gym and doing reps with no rest. We're wearing ourselves out. So, as we've established, this is hard. What I'm bringing up to you guys today and asking you to think about doing is hard work. It's challenging, and it's also very fun. As Eddie mentioned, when I was little, I aspired to be a dolphin trainer. This is me at SeaWorld, rocking my homeschool overalls. With 3 of my siblings, my parents decided to add 3 more children to our family after this. I don't know how they did it. So yeah, I wanted to be a dolphin trainer, and now I write talks for Dave Ramsey and the Personalities. Is there a connection there? I don't know. Not for me to say. I loved the water. I loved sea creatures. I loved the fact that gators lurked in every pond in Central Florida. Jordan does not love that fact. I love seeing manatees at New Smyrna Beach where my grandma lived. In January, I went to the aquarium in Chattanooga with one of my friends. And I just was amazed at the things that I saw there, the beauty that was below the surface. I mean, we just hung out. We stared at this turtle for like 20 minutes. It was trying to get his mom's attention. He kept doing this. He kept moving in front and like waving at her. Like, I don't know, does he need a snack? I don't know what he needs, but we literally watched this happen. You guys, so much beauty awaits us in the deep places. So much to discover, so much wonder. And that's what I want for you. I want you to reconnect with the love of play, with the love of fun, with the ability to get lost in the thing that you were put on this earth to do. I want you to spend less time in the shallow end and more time in the deep end. Schedule a 90-minute work session. Let me know how it goes. I would love to connect with you deeper on this topic, to have lunch, to have coffee, to have continuing conversations about how we can create the best environments for all of us to do our best work. And I have good news for you. You can get out your phones. If you are at all curious on this topic, here are the books that I've read over the past few years that have informed my thinking. Wow, Jeff, that was quick. He was like, got his phone out. These are the books that have informed my thinking on this topic. I would suggest starting with Deep Work by Cal Newport, but they're all fantastic about this problem of distraction and the creative process. So thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.